When a relationship ends, people usually aren't getting along well. They're usually not getting on well and they're conflicted. So perhaps that becomes a pattern, and then when the separation happens, it just ramps that up. Conflict can be communicated in oodles of ways, and human communication is very complex. And in fact, the words we say only make up about 10% of the message that we're conveying. So there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on. There's our non-verbal communication, what we do with our hands, our body, our tone of voice. So an example I often use in it would be, Judy, been looking forward to catching up with you. Or I could say, Judy, I've been looking forward to catching up with you. So the same words, but very different meaning. So communication is very complicated. And a lot of people are not aware of their non-verbal communication. So they're saying a whole lot of things to people that they might not be aware of. And children, their verbal skills and their ability to communicate with words is not as developed. And so they really pick up on the non-verbal stuff. So we have to be really extra careful when kids are involved, and adolescents, children of all ages, because they're super tuned in to the non-verbal communication. So it's really important that we really think about that stuff and be aware of what we're communicating and how we're communicating it, because the kids will pick up on it. And it never ceases to amaze me that parents sometimes will be quite hostile in their communication and not be aware of it, or think that the kids aren't aware of it. Think of two different scenarios. Like a common thing with a separated family will be a drop-off. And so think about a situation where one of the parents has had the children and they're dropping them back to the other parent. So I'll give you two scenarios. One scenario is that the parent pulls up out the front of the house, lets the kids out of the car, they drag their stuff out. They've usually got some bags or something to take with them. They drag their stuff out, they clamber up the driveway, and the parent in the car sits and watches and makes sure they get to the door and the door opens. So they're making sure that they're safe and all that sort of thing. And then they drive away. Compare that to the parent who's had the kids arrives at the house, parks out the front. It's important not to rock up the driveway and sort of take ownership of everything. Park out the front. Help the kids with their stuff. Take it up to the door, knock on the door. The other parent answers the door. You could give them a bit of a fill-in of what you've done for the weekend or however long it's been. Any important messages, like you've been out for the day and the kids are tired, or they had a big lunch, they might not be hungry, just a bit of an update on how things have gone. Thanks for that, and off you go. It's really good to have a business-like relationship with the other parent. So treat the other parent as you treat a colleague at work. And so focusing on the job, and the job is to look after the children. So if you can have that sort of business-like relationship and that sort of conversation with the other parent, just fill them in on what's happened for the weekend. That tells the kids that you care about them, you have some respect for the other parent, even if you're not best friends, doesn't matter, but you have some respect for the other parent, and those are really important messages. And separation can actually be a good thing. If there's been a situation where there's been ongoing conflict, and then there's separation, and then the conflict eases, that's actually better for the children than remaining in the relationship and the conflict going on and on. And so the thing about conflict is it takes two people to be in conflict. I often think about it like a tennis match. You can have two people on a court holding a tennis racket and one person hitting the ball to the other. If the other person doesn't hit it back, you're not playing tennis. And conflict's the same. You can have somebody firing all the insults and abuse you like at another person, but if they don't engage with that, then they're not in conflict. And the person antagonising the situation will get sick of that after a while. Or that energy, maybe it's not that they're trying to be antagonistic, they've just got a lot of energy wound up. So that energy will dissipate over time. So I realise that's really hard, and I think separation and all the things that go along with it is probably one of the hardest things that people will ever face in their life. If you're really focused on the children, and when I work with people, I often say, what will you do for your children? What would you do for your kids if they ask you? And they say, I'll do anything. But still, they really struggle to get a handle on the conflict. So it's that powerful. So yeah, remain as amicable as possible. Get along as well as you can. Don't engage in the conflict. So I guess that means you need to take measures. not to engage in it. So if it does mean having very little contact with the other parent and not talking to them much, okay, well maybe that's what you need to do. Think about the long term as well. What do you want to be doing at your children's 21st birthday? You know, do you want your children to have two separate parties because the parents can't get on? Or do you want to be able to rock up there and have a nice time and make speeches and get along? You know, same with wedding days and things like that. And the other thing that often trips parents up that they're not aware of, but I see it a fair bit, is that kids naturally will pit one parent against the other. And that happens in intact families. It happens all the time, particularly when they're teenagers. And so I've seen situations with separated families that appear to be getting on okay, but they get on okay just because the parents don't talk at all. And what happens is the kids will start saying, oh, I'm going to dad's for the weekend, and they're actually out at their mate's place or something that they know mum or dad wouldn't approve of. And so they actually use the separation and the lack of communication to their advantage. And they're not bad kids, it's just a natural thing that kids do, like I say, particularly teenagers. So, you know, you might think that you're getting on okay if you're not communicating at all, but there are downsides to that as well. So you need to be fair income and really try and have some communication and positive communication and think about that business type relationship. And the job is to look after the children.